developments, international development, to include the United States, and the ways in which they have, cinema has evolved, both in terms of, or not both, but in terms of a business model, in terms of a focus on stories, the types of stories that they tell. And we see very early on that Hollywood and the rest of the world kind of separate right at the beginning in understanding what this thing does, with Edison's slapping a patent on the thing. One of the things it does is makes money. So very early on in the coming of American cinema, and now, as we'll find out today a little bit more about the coming of Hollywood more proper, not just that we've moved to a place, but actually we're going to see how those studios set themselves up in a business model, as well as aesthetics. We also have told the aesthetic history. That is, the ways in which different cinema use the art of cinema in order to tell stories. So with Germany, we said very briefly, and we're going to come back to Germany on Monday's class, and we will discover that Germany is going to push even further into using the cinema, particularly elements of mise-en-scène, which I think I have written up right here, elements of mise-en-scène, in order to investigate, well, if American cinema turns towards action, which was on those notes as well, we said the German film uses mise-en-scène to explore what? Oh, you definitely want to know that. Like mood and psychology, right? If American cinema, as we're going to see when we get to the final part of the notes, in terms of slapstick, moves cinema towards action. We're still in the silent era, so it's going to have to be action that is shown on screen. We're going to then come to find in the next week or two the ways in which Hollywood cinema moves from the silent era and moves action into words. So reliance upon dialogue to pull the story forward. So today what we're going to do is begin to understand even more fully what Hollywood was at the time. So we've moved to Hollywood because of cheap labor, cheap land, and geography, right? There are multiple geographies. You can be in the mountains, you can be in the beach, you can be in the desert, you can be in the forest, and cheap labor as well, and weather, and weather. A wider variety of weather than you had in New York and New Jersey, where films were previously filmed. As well, we also have a complete business model that changed significantly. We moved to that understanding of vertical integration, which we're going to hit here, we're going to hit it very early here. Talk about the structure, business structure of early studios as well. So we're going to fill in that picture of Hollywood today, and then investigate one particular genre of film that was the dominant mode of filmmaking in American cinema during the 1920s, something we're going to call silent slapstick comedy. So to back up now, and to fill in that general introductory outline, we see that at the top, the control of the Motion Picture Patent Company began to fade. The Motion Picture Patent Company comes out of the Edison, right, in response to Edison's ironclad threat on the notion of using patents. By using any technology, you're paying Edison some money back in terms of that patent. And now the MPPC revolts against that, but they're going to start to break up, that MPPC, and those companies that fall out of the MPPC are the same studios that you know today. Studios such as Paramount and MGM and United Artists and Universal. These studios, which we're not going to talk about them too much individually, but they form out of the falling apart of the MPPC, those dominant modes. Louis B. Mayer of MGM, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, is going to be the president of the company, and he's going to be the leader CEO of the company all the way into the 1960s. So we're talking in the teens and in the 1960s. The same guy is going to be driving the studio. Imagine how limited evolution happens when the same manager is over the thing, because he's going to find that through the 20s all the way through the 1940s, his studio, MGM, just like Paramount or Universal, is veritably going to be printing money. That as they've designed themselves in a vertical integration in which they own all aspects of a film's production, distribution, as well as exhibition, that they can just keep the money in the system. Right? They own all of the people under contract. They own all of the the screenplay, the script, they own the film itself, etc. They own the ways in which they copy and then distribute it to different theaters, and then they either own the theater themselves, so again, the money stays inside of the company, so they either own the theaters, or if they did not own the theater, they forced, through contracts, theater owners to show their products. So, for example, if you own an independent Roberts Theater chain around Indiana or something like that, and I said to Paramount, I really want to rent this movie that's coming out and show it on my movie screen. Or if you go to AMC tonight, maybe AMC movie theater tonight and watch a movie, they've rented that thing from the distributor, right? And then you're paying for the rental of that thing. So I want to show this movie, that Paramount's coming out next week. Well, the block booking is when Paramount says, well, if you want to show that movie, you're going to have to show all of these Paramount movies. Remember, they are pumping these things out. We're going to find out even more about that today and then in the next coming weeks. They're just going to be pumping these things out very, very quickly. Paramount's going to release 110 movies, 130 movies in a given year. So contractually forcing an exhibitor, so a guy who owns a movie theater chain, contractually forcing him to rent all of your product if he just wants a couple of those, even if he just wants one or two of those products to rent. So block booking is contractually forcing an exhibitor to show all of your product, not just that one thing that you want. So whether they own the theater chain or not, they still control the theater chain. Right? So this is what we are calling vertical integration, or they increase that control. So they keep all of the money in-house. We're going to be 1948 until the Supreme Court's going to rule that you can no longer block book, you can no longer force people to do this, and they're going to say you cannot own movie theaters at all. And so they're going to take away, not until late 1940s, they're going to take away this aspect of it because they see it as oligopolistic, or monopolistic actually at this point. Monopolistic, that you can't do this. That's too tight of a business control. So this is what I'm talking about at the beginning, or up higher here, where he's talking about increasing that vertical integration through using efforts like block booking, contractually forcing the exhibitor to show stuff. So, but how did those studios set up? I'm going to come back to this point here. But one of the most important developments in terms of production in the United States and all over the world of the latter part of the 19th and the first part of the 20th century was Henry Ford, the guy from Ford Motor Company, when he recognized that if I put these 8 people in a factory and I say, hey, look, I've made this Model T over here, I want you guys to make another one. And then tomorrow we're going to make another one. And then the next day we're going to make another one. And I send you guys onto that task. It comes out looking vastly different than these 8 people who I've also sent to start making Model Ts. Ford recognizes that that's terrible to have different types of cars coming off of the end of the lot, so he recognizes that what we ought to do is to set up an assembly line, where rather than sending a team to build the whole car, she is going to put the wheels up. So we're going to input at the beginning of the assembly line the frame of the car. She's going to put wheels on it, and every time a frame comes by, she's going to put wheels on it, and she's going to put the body on the thing, and she's going to put the doors on the thing, and he's going to put the windshield on the thing, etc. Right? You become specialized in your labor. Right? So now you are the nut tightener, or whatever you happen to be. You're not a car assembly person anymore. You've become specialized. So that the effect of that is that every Model T that goes off of that assembly line is exactly like every other Model T that comes off that assembly line. Ford notes that this is going to matter in terms of being able to sell automobiles because it's consistent. Because this person wants to keep her job, so she's good nut tightener for wheels. So she's always going to tighten those nuts exactly the same way. You're going to always put on the door, etc. You want to keep your job. So every Ford comes off in the same way. Well, studios, when they move out to LA, in the area generically called Hollywood, they're going to set up their movie studios in that same sort of way, just like an assembly line. But now, instead of a car frame going into and then coming out of looking like a full automobile, what they're going to do is have the producer input the screenplay into phase number one, which is a big studio, the physical building, in which this director is mechanized labor because she's really good at filming outdoor scenes. So I put the script in, I say, look, all of these scenes, 4, 12, 19, and 24, are outdoor scenes. I want you to film them. And then I go, as the producer, I go to the next person. I say, you're really good at filming chase scenes. Here are the 3 chase scenes. I want you to film those. You're really good at filming romantic scenes. Here are the romantic scenes. Film them. And so you become specialized in that way. The producer is the most important person in a film's production, not a director. Indeed, as we've said, that with the creation of the star system during the teens, individual movie stars start to get some marquee, they drive up the prices that movies cost to produce, they drive, therefore, relatedly, the cost of movie tickets as well. Well, now, now as well, unlike that, we don't think about a director as having an individual style back in the teens, 20s, and 30s. Indeed, tell me who directed Gone with the Wind? Wait. Okay, so good. Finally. You know that might be the 10th time I've asked that question in a class like this, and the first time I've ever gotten anybody to hazard even a guess on Atlanta's most important cultural document, in the movie, certainly, right? The only one person out of the thousands of people I've asked that question even hazard a guess. That's because if you watch movies from 1939 time period when Gone with the Wind comes out, Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, and what's the other movie that comes out in the same freaking year? It's unbelievable, right? That I can't remember what the third is, but there's another movie that comes out there that continually resonates, right? It was a remarkable year. In 1939, you would never have thought, I want to go see that movie. It's directed by so-and-so. You would not have said that because the director was not allowed to have individual style in that sense. So now you know you want to or don't want to watch the next movie that's called by Tarantino. You know that today. You know I don't like Tarantino-style movies, or I really, really like it. Well, back in the day, the individual style would not have been there. Why? Because this person has been offered this job to direct this script coming in. Why would she ever try something different or varied? Because she knows she's getting the job because she did well last time, so she's going to repeat the formula this time as well. She's going to film all those outdoor scenes the exact same way because he must have given me that job because he liked the way I did it. I'll do it the same way. So tonight, if you were to go with your significant person in your life and watch movies, you might vote classic Hollywood movies from the 1930s, 1940s. You are going to like or dislike those movies for much the same reason. You're going to respond to, oh, I knew that's what was going to happen. I knew they were going to hook up. I knew that that's who stole the loot. I knew that's who did it. And you're going to love that. And it's going to confirm in you, like, I knew they were going to get together because love always tries. Or you're going to go, I knew they were going to hook up. I knew that's who did it. I knew that's the way it was going to end up and that sort of thing. Because they become very, very patterned in that sense. So if you go to Universal Studios in Florida and pay attention to the Universal movies from the 1930s, they were mapped at doing horror movies, particularly creature types of movies. So Creature from the Black Lagoon, Werewolf, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and those sorts of things. Like every other studio at that time, there would have been a manual called Universal, How to Make a Universal Movie, right? Remember, here we mean Universal, the company. How to make a Universal movie. Well, I've just given them a script. They already know that chapter 1's about lighting. This is how we light in a Universal movie. Chapter 2, this is how we edit in a Universal movie. Chapter 3, this is how we, etc. All the way through. It was already dictated to the studio directors, that is, they're not individual. It's in that sense. They're studio directors. They work for the man, the producer. Those studio directors don't have the ability to put a personal signatory style or to be a stylist in that sort of way that's unique to them. The producer, along with the screenwriter, plugs that script into the assembly line in order that every single film comes off looking the exact same. So if you watch Universal movies from the 1930s, a very easy example of this every time the damsel is being chased by the creature or the vampire or whatever it happens to be, there's no sound being used. Universal had a rule that you don't use music during the chase sequence, right? So no jaw going up, when the pursuit thing is happening. None of that. They wanted you to film silent, even in the talkie era, and only use footprints. Footprints. You can't hear the footprint, right? Exactly. Footsteps, whatever that be, outside on the leaves or on the concrete with high heels, whatever it happened to be. That's how you use sound in the Universal movie. But same would have been true for Paramount or MGM as well. They filmed in a very standard, mechanized sort of way. So it's very limited. We don't think about the director in the same sort of way that you and I think about a director today. That way. So they plugged in what we call a continuity script, right? So a screenplay is the story, right? And the overall arc in which the story, guy's going to meet girl, a little crisis is going to erupt, then we're going to come and resolve that crisis and then wrap that thing up. Well, that's the script, the scenario. The script is the dialogue written into that, and then a continuity script is where the producer makes sure that this director we can move from her scenes into the next scenes that we want in a continuous manner. So that scene 1 ends in such a way that scene 2 organically flows from that, right? So you have to detail, how do we get from one scene, not one shot, but from one scene to the next in terms of time and space. And so the producer, along with the screenwriter, would have come along and developed a continuity script. So there's kind of 3 levels of that, right? There's a script, which is the story arc, and then there's the screenplay, which is the dialogue written, and then there's a continuity script, which is about directors, not about actors at all in that sense. So the producer is the most important person during this time period. The producer's goal at any one of those studios would have been working towards, as we said at the end of the notes, at the beginning of the notes on D.W. Griffith, to work towards linear flow, to work towards continuity, or another way of understanding it, clear storytelling. So that you organize not only individual scenes, but from one scene into the next, you organize, actually, you control the viewer's thought process. You keep him or her inside of the frame itself by moving it forward, not leaving any plot elements out, always guaranteeing that the viewer has the perfect vantage point from which to watch action unfold. So for example, what do I mean by that? How does that look? There's a movie called Notorious, an Alfred Hitchcock movie, in which Cary Grant and Isabella Rossellini, Ingrid Bergman, are trying to discover some secret, and they need to get into a basement during a really lively party that's going on. They need to get in the basement, they need a key to get in the basement. So they set out a plan. Ingrid Bergman is going to go and get that key somehow. Well, we're going to look, Cary Grant is going to be standing above on the 2nd floor, looking down over a party. We're going to get a shot looking up at Cary Grant, and then we're going to get a close-up of Cary Grant, or a mid-shot of him looking out, and then there's going to be a look out to the crowd itself, right? That is, it puts the view, it goes, here's who's looking, here's what he's looking at. Right? It moves you into his viewpoint. You don't see those edits, you don't pay attention, because this one immediately links to the mid shot, which then immediately links up to the eye line match. Right? He's looking out, cut, you're going to be looking at what he's looking at. Well, then we cut back to him and he looks kind of like a surprise look, like, I see what I want to see now. And we cut back and it's Ingrid Bergman's character down there, and then there's the weirdest thing that you've seen in every single movie that ever happens, that you've ever watched. Then there's a cut to a close-up, and there's a cut to a close-up of her where she's got her back to him, right, so we're looking down at her. Then there's a cut to a close-up of her hand, and she's got the key in it. And then it cuts back to shot of him going, or something, I mean, looking at her like, got it, see it. Where in the world did that cut to close-up come from? Did he do it? Did he go, with his eye? Remember, we just couched it that he's looking over the thing, and it made us identify with his look, eye line match, and then there's a cut to a close-up. Well, you can't do that. right? You don't have a little optical thing in your eye that zoom cuts close up. There's no relationship between that and your vision at all. And yet, you don't even recognize the impossibility of that that's just happened, a cut to close up, right? That is clear storytelling. You learn the fact that she's got the key, and you don't pay attention to how you learned that at all, right? To a cut to close up that cannot be embodied, right? Cary Grant can't be giving you that close up. The way that he can be giving you the shot over the crowd, right, looking down on him, you can embody that in Cary Grant by filming him here, eye line match what he's looking at. And it embodies the look, but it can't embody that cut, but you don't see that, and you don't think about it in any sort of way. You don't leave the box. It guarantees that you've got the best seat in the house. You go, she's got the key, now what's she going to do with it? Or whatever happens, right? That sort of thing. So the scene unfolds without you seeing any of those edits. It unfolds in a clearly told story in a way that decreases the import of the artistic aspects. It subordinates the art, the choice of all of those edits, the camera angles, the lighting, the color, the sound, all of the thousands of choices that went into filming that very simple scene hides the art of that. You don't know that the camera just goes up and films her from a close-up, and then, I don't know, whatever else the camera does, you just edit those things together, and suddenly it flows in a continuous fashion, and the audience does not recognize how it flows in that sense. They just experience it as a continuity in that sense. So classical Hollywood cinema, the work that I've got kind of defined here, the continuity system, we're going to refine that even more in the next couple of weeks and call that the invisible style. The invisible style, in which it is subordinated all art, all those choices, the editing, the lighting, the camera, the color, the sound, all those elements in favor of the story. That what you pay attention to in a classically styled Hollywood movie, and this does not go just through the 30s and the 60s, but on through today, when you watch a Steven Spielberg movie, as example, he is classically trained in this continuity style. When you're watching Indiana Jones, you're not paying attention to how you're learning the story. Run, Indy, run, is all you're thinking, or wow, he's a hero, or whatever you're thinking in that sense. You're not paying attention to how am I getting this story told to me. And if you've watched certain types of films that are interested in showing you its construction, it shouts at you and you realize you're watching a movie and you try to think about it and what does that mean? As soon as you're thinking about that stuff, you've drifted. You've drifted off of the screen and trying to think about it. Where did that come from? Cool shot, wow. Any of that, you've drifted. The classical, high classical Hollywood style, of which I think Steven Spielberg is the master, never asks you to consider that sort of stuff. When we watch films, and towards the end of the semester by French filmmakers from the 1960s, most of you are going to really hate it and go, I know what movies I don't want to ever watch again, because Godard and Truffaut, the two filmmakers we're going to talk about at that time, are constantly going to be saying, do you notice you're watching a movie? Do you notice you're watching a movie? The whole time, interrupting anything like clear storytelling. Interrupting anything like linearity and flow. They're not interested in that sort of mechanism in the way in which you want almost all of the movies that you watch. The Chronicle, is that what it's called? The movie I just asked about earlier, the Superpower Boy movie, right? You don't watch that and other than go, cool, I wish I could do that, right? It's just tapping into your stupid, it's tapping into our natural human impulses to desire and imagine a fantasy us. Is what I'm sorry, it's not stupid, it's totally natural, right? But that movie clearly maps direct, that's where its contact point is. The fantasy, I mean, you recognize this very much as targeted towards a particular audience, right? My parents watch that, your parents watch that advertisement. Do you think they have any interest in going and seeing that movie? No, it's targeted in a certain way. It's targeted to people who still have fantasies of themselves. You should always have fantasies, but not fantasies about yourself. Right? But the teen, the late teen and early 20s years, we still have fantasies about, I just wish I could, and then you can't articulate it. You stumble over it. You just know something's going on and you want it to be different somehow, and you just wish you dot, dot, dot. You can never finish it, right? In that sort of way, right? I know you can go, yeah, I always want to kill that bit. You know, something like, I know that sort of thing, right? But tapping into the fantasy idea, that's what the Chronicle is doing. You might go, wow, that's a cool shot, but the story is contained in the screen itself. I imagine my fantasy or my ideas about that movie is that it's going to play around with the whole, if I had superpowers, I'd use them thoughtfully and ethically debate. Is that right? Is that, no one saw it?
What?
It focuses more on like the villain aspect rather than the hero aspect.
On the villain aspect, right?
Yeah.
So it fantasizes you being a villain?
Kind
Not
of.
exactly.
Not exactly, all right? I'm just speculating, just my wild conjecture here, right? But certainly it taps into fantasy stuff about like superpowers. Wow, I wish I could just make that car right there, like that cop car with its lights on right behind me. Yeah. All right? That's always the one I want. Anytime there's light, anyway. All right. Some of the examples, the way in which you do that, the way in which you subordinate art in favor of the story, we've already talked about with D.W. Griffith. It's getting cut in a very fluid manner within the same time and space. You can do that, achieve movement in time and space by motivating edits and eyeline matches. Anytime you got a close-up of someone going, oh my gosh, what's that over there? Cut to something, and then cut back to me, right? You know that you've looked at what I've looked at. My dialogue has motivated the edit. What's that over there? Makes that edit happen in that sense. It motivates it. And then it comes back to me and I go, it's a door, or whatever, right? That is, it's also doing that through, it can also do that through eyeline matches, right? If one character goes, looking screen left, right? So I'm on the screen and I'm looking screen left and I go, what's that? And then you cut to another character who's looking screen right and goes, like that. You've just matched eye lines, right? In that sense. You've connected time and space. You could film person A and person B in different weeks, edit them together. It looks like they're looking at each other, right? You can't edit them, it wouldn't be a two-shot. You couldn't put them together without being physically in time and space, without special effects. But you could do that, right? But you could link anything together at all. You could put anything next to something else, and then the audience goes, they're connected in time and space. When you could film them at any time at all, right? There's a clip we're going to watch from Citizen Kane in which a little boy is going to throw a snowball. Cut, the snowball is going to hit a sign and blow up. Cut, it's going to be back on the little boy who says something. They could have filmed the snowball hitting the sign on Thursday and the boy next month. Put them together and it looks like the boy threw that snowball, right? That's continuity editing. By, in this instance, using a motivated edit, throwing it off screen this way, which way is it going to enter the next frame? This way, right? It's still moving like our train in Great Train Robbery. It's still flying the same way. It hits something in that way. That's a motivated edit. My dialogue has done it. When you got a close-up on me, I'm on the phone, and I say, I'm going on home. Cut. I walk into a door. You don't think to yourself, where is he? My dialogue has motivated the edit. However long and however far away home was, didn't matter one little bit, we just jumped over it, right? We elided that. We suppressed the artistic aspects by focusing on clear storytelling in that way. In terms of script, so there's some those were some basic aesthetic, artistic aspects of it, but also in terms of script itself, story and character elements as well. We're going to move the story along by a very clear chain of cause and effect. One thing causes the next, which causes the next, which causes the next. One way to, best understand that is to watch characters. That characters in movies, in these classically styled continuity script style movies, of which again I think that Steven Spielberg is a classic example of this. Characters are going to be relatively consistent bundles of traits and ticks and tags, identifiers, right? If a movie's only got 2 hours of your attention, it's going to rely upon typecasting. Stereotyping, but I don't mean that with the negative connotations of stereotyping. They're going to make recognizable universal characters who have character traits, ticks, and tags about them that you recognize immediately. In the silent slapstick era, when you want to show the villain, have them have a mustache, and you're going to have them going, or, well, he can't make noise, but and chewing on a cigar. It's a type, right? It's become type. Well, in the talkie era, all the way through today, all the way through the Chronicle, those characters in that movie, and countless other movies that are out today, like, what is the one, like Make Love Not War? Two CIA agents, they're the best. Are in love with the same girl. This Means War, right? And This Means War. They're going to be clearly recognizable characters within 10 minutes. How do we know this? Because check out movies. Give me an example of a movie in which characters are not so clearly drawn. Fight Club, right? At first, you recognize this guy. He looks an awful lot like Neo. Okay, not physically. I mean, his character, like the Matrix character, he wants to be somehow different. He's frustrated with where he is. He's got a job that's a job, right? Jobs suck. Careers are awesome. He's got this job. He's not feeling very good. And then introduce another character who upsets that mode, right? Even Tyler Durden, yeah, his name. Even Tyler Durden is a pretty typecast character. But put those two together and you get something relatively interesting happen. So in classically styled movies, the good guys, the John Wayne type of mythological character is a recognizable instant character when walking on. Not because it's John Wayne, the actor, but because he embodies a particular type of character. And that character's consistency, and through classical Hollywood movie, is what's going to motivate the plot to move forward. Going to cause something to happen. Because Humphrey Bogart's character in classically styled detective movies of the 40s and 50s, because Humphrey Bogart's character is so determined to get to the truth and he doesn't care about love or anything else, you know by the end of the movie the problem's going to be solved. You know it's going to be summed up in some sort of way. The only trick is to find out how we're going to get there in that sense. Characters moving the plot story forward. Those are in conflict. Often these characters are in conflict with the protagonist, the person around whom, we don't mean hero here, we mean the person around whom all the story elements revolve, right? That in The Graduate, which we'll watch the last weeks of the semester, in The Graduate, this guy, Benjamin Braddock, much like other folks in these movies, is going to want his future to be different. And the very first 8 seconds of the movie, he's going to say, I want my future to be different. And it's going to look heroic. Like, we know what that arc looks like. He's going to be like Luke Skywalker. I just want to go out to the academy and fight the dark side. Fight the Empire. Fight the Empire. Come on, Uncle Owen. Oh, crap, you're dead. Now I guess I'm going to go off on that big trip. Right? These sorts of recognizable characters up on screen. Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate is going to look like that character. Now we're going to watch him become hero, just like Neo, right? I don't know if I'm the one, the Oracle, I don't know, she didn't think so. You know, oh gosh, Dad. And then, and then suddenly he's going to be that hero. Same thing with Luke in that way. But those characters are going to pull the story forward in that way. But the thing about The Graduate is that he is totally anti-heroic. He doesn't do anything at all. He wants his future to be different, and you're going to hate that character by 30 minutes into the movie. You're going to be bored, you're going to be angry with him because he's Fred Flintstone. He's spinning his feet and not moving forward in any sort of way. A hero, we know, moves forward. A protagonist, a hero acts in the world. The protagonist differs in that sense, right? The protagonist is just the person around whom the story elements revolve. Benjamin Braddock's going to be the protagonist through the entire movie, The Graduate, but he's not heroic in any sort of way. He's not going to do anything at all. It's static. So protagonist, and then we know that antagonist here, right? The antagonist is going to be the person who's going to run into conflict with that protagonist. Who's not? We don't want to just use it synonymously with hero in that sort of way. Regularly running into some form of a deadline. That's how you make sure the movie moves forward. If a movie only's got 2 hours of your attention, it has to rely upon recognizable characters, recognizable story arcs, introduce the story, bring it to some sort of climax, and then give a sense of wrap-up, denouement at the end. They only have a certain amount of your time. They can't develop brand new, fresh characters. They have to rely upon form and formula. Same thing, form and formula being produced in the assembly line-like function, you fall into formula. I know how to do those scenes. I know how to do those scenes. I'm going to keep doing those scenes the same way. It becomes very formula, and you either like or dislike that formula. It either just gets boring because, duh, that's how it was going to end. I knew that was who the hero was. I knew he was going to save the day. I knew they were going to hook up. Or, I love it. and that sort of thing. So, now let's check out some clips, because I felt bad only showing you crap clips for the last 2 class periods. D.W. Griffith, I don't know how much attention, anyway. No one went home and put that on Netflix Instant View and watched it, I can hear it, right? Now to some movie clips. So, Mack Sennett, so let's move into silent slapstick comedy. Again, we're marking this as the most recognizable dominant mode, what we're going to end up calling genre, right? Western. The gangster picture at the end of the 1920s is going to become the next super genre into the sound era. Gangster pictures are going to thrive in the sound era. You can investigate crime, criminality, and their life very well using words. As we'll see in a moment, slapstick comedy is going to die with the coming of sound to a large degree, precisely because it's so wed to the silent screen, as we'll see in a moment. So Mack Sennett moves out to LA, and he's working with the Biograph Picture Company, which is what D.W. Griffith is working with. So he understands editing patterns, he understands how to tell stories, but he is totally only interested in comedy. Nothing else. He is interested in a physical style of comedy in which the laws of reality do not exist. So Mack Sennett comes along and sets up our first recognizable studio that we've just described. He's going to recognize how to do this sort of stuff, and he's going to use that studio, that assembly line-like studio, to create silent slapstick comedy. It is what we're going to call the new spectacle. If the earliest years of moving pictures were a spectacle, the cinema of attraction stuff, they were a spectacle because of the technology itself. Oh my gosh, you got the world up. What's our example? Eiffel Tower. You got the Eiffel Tower. How did you do that? Wow, you've got those people in this box. How did that happen? If we've evolved from that, the new spectacle that we have here is this, which being influenced by pantomime, like silent acting, silent live acting, the circus in which all sorts of craziness can unfold, chase films, and slapstick. That is of the type that you recognize maybe with the Three Stooges, and a physical style of comedy, a poking in the eyes, smacking in the head. The Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, and Laurel and Hardy are all going to come out of the silent slapstick era, and some of them, like Laurel and Hardy, well, all 3 of those groups, are going to come out and be relatively successful. But it's going to be a very small genre for those folks, right? No one else is going to be doing it in that way. And indeed today, I don't know that anyone really does slapstick comedy. Jim Carrey did, certainly early on in his career, Mask stuff, and maybe before that with In Living Color. Or is that the band? The band is Living Color, and the show's In Living Color. That guy, who's the guitar player for In Living Color? That guy's one of the baddest guitar players of all time. Anyway, whatever. That Jim Carrey kind of did a physical comedy, and maybe still slightly does that, but no one else is really performing a physical style of comedy so complete, or so significant at least, as the conversion into dialogue, turning physical action into verbal antics. Jackass. Okay, so that's a good example. That's a very good example, right? With the rise of the ability to record anywhere at any time, right? We can all walk around with a camera of some type, your phone to your handheld sort of thing. With the rise of that technology and its ubiquity, now it gives rise to candid camera before that, right? And then Road Rule, what's the one before Road Rules? All the people live together. Real world, and that sort of genre that then inspires Jackass to do stunt sort of thing, right? Go and do that sort of thing. It certainly is that. Again, niche, though, right? Real small market in that sense of that. So silent slapstick. So what is it? The spectacle is influenced by all of these things, creates this surreal universe in which laws of lived reality don't exist. Now, I'm not going to take time because I want to show you clips from Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd in a minute. But Mack Sennett is the guy who's going to give us the Keystone Cops. So again, Mack Sennett is going to give us Keystone Cops. The Keystone Cops are bumbling idiot cops who are called out regularly when a villain has got his spurned love interest tied up to a railroad track. right? Classic sort of silent slapstick is which we introduce a girl who comes onto stage and she blinks her eyes and then cut to a boy who looks a little bit boyish and sheepish and like demure about the whole thing. Cut, there's a guy behind the tree going, I love her, or something like that. And then she's going to spurn his love. He's going to tie her up to a railroad track with chains waiting for the train to come and kill her. You know, when your mom or your grandmother complains about violence in movies today, just go, what's more violent than tying a woman up to a train track and expecting and awaiting anxiously for the train to come and just obliterate her, right? Nothing's more violent than that. Any of the stuff they do in the Chronicles, not anywhere near as violent as the potential of this violence. So a typical sort of scene in a Mack Sennett, Keystone Cops movies has just opened as I just described to you, and then there's some mysterious phone call to the cops. And these unindividuated, that is, you don't recognize the sergeant in relationship to anybody else, it's just a group of cops, are going to get their line and they're going to run and jump in the paddy wagon to go to the crime scene where the girl's trapped, right? They're going to run into it, 12 guys going to fit into the back of the paddy wagon. Well, that's going to drag the paddy wagon down, so the paddy wagon's going to be on its back tires, trying to pull away, and finally it's going to rock it out. Well, what happens is the back of the paddy wagon opens and people fall out of it. The first guy's going to grab the bumper of the paddy wagon and everybody's going to grab the ankles of somebody behind them. The paddy wagon's going to again struggle to get going and then pull off, and everybody's going to be falling. They're going to be laying on their stomachs, being drugged behind the paddy wagon down the street. Paddy wagon's going to make a hard, sharp turn. And when they do, it's going to be right around a utility pole. So all those people are going to get wrapped up around the utility pole. The car is going to try to pull away. Why am my paddy wagon not going? And finally break free. And the characters are going to ride. He's going to slam on his brakes. They're all going to end up in the back of the paddy wagon because they just arrived at the crime scene. They're going to jump out and save the girl. And they're going to shoot the bad guy who's going to spin around going like this. And then try to shoot himself in the head, click off his gun, it malfunctions, and fall face down into a mud puddle. Fiend. Well, the end comes out, right? And that's all it was. He would rip off these things 3 a day. Totally, you can recognize the silent style of acting going on, complete and utter chaos like the traditional circus, and obviously this physical style of slapstick and the chase scene and all of that, right? So very distinct, wed entirely to the screen. You don't need dialogue to tell anything. It's self-contained. In a real way, it connects back to what we said about Georges Méliès. It's pure cinema. Because if I show you that, no matter where you are from, what racial, ethnic, national, any heritage that you have, you all respond to it in the same way. I mean, except for the tough people in the room who are going to be like, I'm not going to laugh. You said I'd laugh and I'm not. There you go. Other than those stoics out there in the, anyway, other than those folks, we all respond to it in the same way. It's like that Georges Méliès, self-contained. It's pure cinema in that sense, in that way, right? Silent, slapstick, visual type of world in which logic is totally, like, there's no logic, right? You would die if you get struck by a car on your face, right? That's where we went. Well, so Mack Sennett's that first guy to set up a studio. Charlie Chaplin is going to be in New York City, a vaudeville actor, famous, his parents are relatively well known around New York City for being live performers that blend comedy, circus style of performance and physical antics. And he's going to see this new art in cinema, and he's going to move out to LA and start working with Mack Sennett. There's a movie called Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. plays Charlie Chaplin, and I think Dan Aykroyd plays Mack Sennett. I'm not sure. Regardless, Charlie Chaplin's going to work for the first, like 1910 to 1918 with Mack Sennett, pumping out like a movie every other day, pumping out this stuff. One of the things that's going to happen is that character, what we're going to call Little Tramp, whoops, that should say is, not Ms., whatever. Is. Little Tramp is the first internationally recognized superstar. That is, or character or actor in the sense. That is, it precisely exports so well all around the globe because it's pure cinema. It's wed, it's got everything, it's wed to the silent screen, it's got everything you need here. So his rise to superstardom in the late 19 teens, and then it's just going to explode all the way through 1950 50s, and I'll tell you the end of the sad Charlie Chaplin life later. Regardless, what he's going to do is get frustrated with Mack Sennett's films, because all they have for their ultimate end is a gag or a trick or another little sort of trick or something at the end. That's all. There's no characterization. None of the characters are developed in any sort of way. It doesn't end in any realistic way. The end is the comedy. That's all it's after in that way. Charlie Chaplin's going to be frustrated with that, and he wants to add a number of things to it. The first is characterization. So for him, he's going to write, direct, and star in all of his movies, and he's going to develop his own individual character, right? Adds characterization. He's going to be individuated. The Tramp is going to be visually recognizable to you right away. When you see him, you'll recognize Charlie Chaplin. He, 20 years before Hitler, is going to have a little mustache just like this, right? His waddle, you're going to see him waddle with his cane throughout the clip that I watch, that I show you in just a moment. He's going to be a recognizable character, characterized by the world always beating him down. He's under my thumb. The world has got him down. The man, the system, whatever is keeping him down. And the world, as we'll see in the opening scene from Modern Times in just a moment. He's going to add that characterization so other characters are going to be individuated. We're going to start seeing individual characters, not just general cops in that sense, this group of people, but now we're going to start to have individuals whose characters themselves are going to develop individually. But most importantly, what Chaplin is going to give to this silent slapstick comedy is a very strong move towards social commentary, social satire. Charlie Chaplin's going to be the only movie star of the silent slapstick era to have a significant career after the coming of sound. And he's already a star by 1915. By 1927, when sound comes up, he is the international superstar. And he's going to make movies into the 1940s. In 1940, he's going to make a movie called The Great Dictator. And he's going to have his little handlebar mustache, and his name is going to be Adenoid Hinkle, A-H, like Alfred Hitchcock. Sorry, Adolf Hitler, sorry, A-H, like Adolf Hitler. He's going to have designs on world domination, just like Adolf Hitler had, and he's going to be the leader of the army of the double cross. Right? So instead of a swastika thing, and you get the double entendre, right? It's both two crosses, but also the notion of the double cross. And he's going to, talking to his general one day, and go, you know what? I want to kill all the Jews, and then the brunettes, and the redheads, and he's going to keep going on and on. He's going to be more or less quoting Hitler and be used as commentary. In 1940, we're not involved in what's still at that moment called the European War, or the Jewish problem. That's what the United States is calling what we now call World War II. It's the European War. We're not involved in that war yet, and he is already making a movie that mocks Hitler. He's going to set up concentration camps. This is how he's going to have a general who keeps walking onto the scene and goes, "I've got the new way to kill the Jews." And he's going to build him a jacket that explodes, or he's going to get him like little James Bond sorts of execution, little silent darts, and he's going to keep going, no, and he goes, how about a gas chamber? Yes, he says, right? Man, can you imagine coming out with not being on South Park and mocking, I don't know, Saddam Hussein, right? When they mocked Saddam Hussein when he was still around, or Osama bin Laden. Sorry, that was not like the intentional thing. Anyway, right, everyone dies for me. Saddam and Osama bin Laden, right? You can't imagine that. That would be taboo in a sort of way. So his dedication to this social, in that sense, satire, but social commentary is going to come through at the beginning of his film, The Immigrant, in which he's on a steamliner going towards New York City and Ellis Island, so right beside the Statue of Liberty, right? It's right there. And it's going to pull around the corner or whatever, and he's going to see the Statue of Liberty, reverse shot between the Statue of Liberty and him looking really, really hopeful, and then shot to the bottom of the Statue of Liberty where it says, "Bring me your huddled masses, your downtrodden, you know, all that crap, and he's going to look so hopeful. Then he's going to get onto Ellis Island, and all the immigration officers are going to start herding them like cattle, prodding them, not caring about them, treating them like crap, robbing their stuff from them, separating them from their stuff. This time he's going to look back at the Statue of Liberty and have a scowl on his face. Going like, you don't mean that stuff. That in 1938, when that movie comes out, or 1940, when The Great Dictator comes out, and 1934, I think, when Modern Times, which we'll watch a clip from now, come out, he films all of them in silent. He doesn't film them in the new sound era. As you'll see in a moment, all of the sound is going to be post-produced. They'll add any dialogue, to just say it into a microphone later, and then what you would call dub it over, but post-sync it in that sense, post-synchronize lips and that sort of thing. He was so tied to that silent screen, and he's the only one who's able to make the move out of that. So he's making these movies that both openly criticize America. I mean, that we're not involved in the European war right now as part of the topic of Modern Times. This is absurd. This guy, he's the president, the country is called Colmania, and he wants to team up with Italiano, or no, not called that, it's not that overt, but he's going to get together with another country just to the south. As happens in World War II, that Germany kind of goes to Italy and goes, hey, we better partner up. You want to partner up on this world domination thing? You got a lot of blondes in your country. No, you don't. Anyway, whatever, right? They get this relationship. Well, he's going to, that's his social commentary, criticizing the way America operates, or in Modern Times, criticizing the industry, as we'll see in just a moment. In 1948, 1949, 50 time period, which we'll explore much more in a couple of weeks, where you have McCarthy. Joseph McCarthy is going to come along with McCarthyism, the whole Red Scare, looking for communists who've infiltrated the United States, particularly through Hollywood. He and the House of Representatives is going to pull thousands of people from Hollywood in front of cameras, big super production, and ask them, have you now or have you ever been a communist? Or do you know anybody who's a communist? And when Charlie Chaplin is going to be charged with this, asking these questions, and his response is like, have you not watched my movies? Are my movies not the most overtly supportive of America? Critical, yes, but hopeful also, simultaneous. He's so offended by the question, he moves to Switzerland and never comes back. Lives the rest of his life in Switzerland because he just cannot fathom that he was asked this question. His dedication to the art of America through the first part of the 20th century was such, and his commitment to the type of commentary that he made on society was so tied to that time period. It's inconceivable to him that they could ask him that question. He's just so offended, he just moves away from the country. Anyway, all right, so let's check out some of that. So we're going to watch Modern Times. It did say president, who is taking pills, doing puzzles, and reading the comics.
Section 5, meter up, wall 1.
You hear how that's post-produced? That's not coming from that scene itself. It's laid afterwards. The sound is laid over it afterwards.
Attention foreman. Trouble on bench 5. Check under the ciphers. Just coming to loose on bench 5. Attention foreman.
It was no accident that I called you a nut tighter earlier. Right. It was a lead-in to connect it to this, right? So we're way into the talkie era by like 7 or 8 years. And so most audiences, all audiences, would have expected a talkie. But his style of story and character and comedy is silent. It wouldn't be any better if he goes, "You jerk!" or whatever.
Section 5, more speed, 47. Release man passing. Release man passing.
Notice you haven't paid any attention to the story, how the story is being told to you. You knew that when he opened the door and then he walks on to the next screen, that those scenes are linked in time and space.
Quit stalling, get back to work.
Like that, you got to clock out to go to the bathroom. That his work, he has become his work, right? That mechanized, specialized labor like that deforms you, quite literally in some instances. So they're coming to his office and they want to sell him a lunch machine.
No breath, no.
They'll come in back in a second, but they want. You'll see what they. Notice what he does: cut away, cut in to a close up, just like I said before. Now, like the key thing. Cut back to this. He sits down. He set up the joke for you, right? Oh, but the joke does not happen the way it looked like it was going to happen. It happens a different way. This is their food machine, eating machine, that will make eating more efficient, or lunch break more efficient. No. You still aren't paying attention to all the edits and all the camera movements and you're sitting in a film class where I told you to look for them and you're still not doing it. That shows kind of the unbelievable power of that invisible style. You're not paying attention to how you're being told this story at all. You don't see the art in that sense. So life is going to get down on him right now, right? He's going to get arrested for chasing this woman, but we see it in the film as the direct result of his being converted to a nut tiger. I have another clip. Got a couple while, got a little bit here. Yeah. Another character actor during the time period who made many, many successful movies, but who did not push for social satire, critical social commentary nearly as far as Charlie Chaplin did, is a guy named Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton. This is called Steamboat Bill. Buster Keaton is going to push even further. What was so delightful about that moment in modern times when he goes into the machine is that the integration of him literally in the machine, right? The machine had made him into what he was, right? That's why he's chasing all these folks around towards the end. Well, those are elements of mise en scène, everything in front of the camera. Well, check out what Buster Keaton can do with everything in front of the
When
camera.
they do that scene though, it's like when he goes backwards, they just make that scene
They
go.
just reverse it. So there's the biggest cyclone ever has just hit this sleepy town where our hero, or our protagonist, is located. You'll meet him, you'll see him in just a moment at the hospital. Biggest windstorm ever. His face is never going to change through any one of his movies ever. To me, that same deadpan that he's got, the look that he's got right there. I'm just turning it down, I'm not stopping it. But I wasn't actually. One of the things that you've seen that you've never seen before in these clips are those cut-ins or cutaways, just as the one I described to her hand with a key in it. We've seen numerous places in which this has happened with the breaking away. You don't want to get, there's not a take two. Right? You better get that right, because that's not special effect other than the dropping of the building and the perfect placement of that actor, Buster Keaton. Cutaways, you set it up, that side of that building is coming off, you cut to the close up of the hot bubble suit to set up a joke and other elements, right? So you don't see those cuts, but yet they're perfectly in line with the continuity of the story. Like this, cut away to that. So when you cut to this, now the truck, oh, ow. The truck is going to come onto the screen. Right here. And you don't wonder where it came from. Because it already cut away to it. Now come back to the same scene. And we watch it continue. That's a pretty slick move right there. To end the class on. Taking off you 3 minutes. So, no